The Arctic region bears on the common interests of the international community, and China's activities in the Arctic promote the peace, stability, and sustainable development there. They're in line with the international law, and all countries' right and freedom in carrying out activities in the region should be fully respected. The U.S. should not use other countries as a pretext for seeking selfish gains.
According to reports, U.S. President Trump in the White House met with oil industry executives and said that China and Russia will only be able to purchase Venezuelan crude oil under U.S. control in the future. He also said that if the U.S. does not take over Venezuela's oil industry, China and Russia will do so. And also he said that the aim of the U.S. operation in Venezuela was to send a message to China to stay away from the Americas and undermine its energy ties. What's your comment?
All LAC countries are sovereign and independent states that have rights to choose cooperation partners independently. No matter how the situation may change, China will continue to deepen practical cooperation with LAC countries, including Venezuela, for common development. Next one, please.
Question from Prensa Latina News Agency from Cuba. Yesterday, the U.S. President issued a new threat against the people and government of Cuba amidst international condemnation of U.S. aggression against Latin America. What is China's comment on this situation?
China firmly supports Cuba in safeguarding its national sovereignty and security and opposing external interference. We once again urge the U.S. to stop the blockade, sanctions, and coercion of all forms against Cuba at once and act in ways conducive to regional peace and stability.
Thank you, spokesperson. Question for Anadolu Agency. U.S. President Donald Trump on Sunday argued that taking over Greenland is necessary for the U.S. to prevent Russia or China from gaining control of the Arctic territory. He said, and I quote, "We are talking about acquiring, not leasing, not having it short term. If we don't do it, Russia or China will." What is China's comment?
The Arctic region bears on the common interests of the international community, and China's activities in the Arctic promote the peace, stability, and sustainable development there. They're in line with the international law, and all countries' right and freedom in carrying out activities in the region should be fully respected. The U.S. should not use other countries as a pretext for seeking selfish gains.
Thank you. Officials from the G7 and other countries are meeting in the U.S. to discuss rare earth supply chains. And Nikkei has also reported that Japanese companies are having difficulty getting rare earth supplies for civilian use. Would the Foreign Minister like to comment on either one of these? Thanks.
China stepped up export control of dual-use items toward Japan to safeguard national security and interests and fulfill non-proliferation and other international obligations. These measures are fully justified, reasonable, and lawful. On keeping the global industrial and supply chains of critical minerals safe and stable, China's position has not changed, and all parties have the responsibility to play a constructive role to this end.
Beijing News Daily. It's reported that Taiwan said on January the 9th that the Taiwan-related part in the joint press release of the China-EU strategic dialogue is a distortion of facts and undermines the island's sovereignty, was China's comment. The One China principle is a prevailing international consensus and a basic norm governing international relations. It is also the political foundation of relations between China and African countries. The 2024 FOCAC summit adopted the Beijing Declaration, in which participating African countries and the AU Commission reaffirmed their firm commitment to the One China principle, and that there is but one China in the world. Taiwan is an inalienable part of China's territory, and the government of the PRC is the sole legal government representing the whole of China. They also expressed their firm support to all efforts by the Chinese government to achieve national reunification. The joint press release of the 9th China-AU Strategic Dialogue fully and faithfully represents the consistent and clear stance of the African side on the Taiwan question. A few days ago, the AU Commission chairperson said in an interview that we'll be on board with China on the issue of One China principle forever. We urge the Taiwan authorities to see the facts and stop its poor political stunts that will only disgrace itself.
Thank you, spokesperson. I want to go back to my Greenland question because I think you answered it as like a common use Arctic territory. You said its Arctic is open for all countries, but is Greenland is a part of Denmark? My question was about what does China's comment of U.S. taking over a sovereign territory of another country, and if that happens, what will China's interests in the particular territory will be? What's your comment on this? Thank you.
China always believes that state-to-state relations shall be handled in accordance with purposes and principles of the UN Charter. On the Arctic region, let me stress that the right and freedom of all countries to carry out normal activities in the region shall be fully respected. Next one, please.
Thank you. Question from RIA Novosti to follow up about the Arctic. German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul earlier offered U.S. President Donald Trump to work together within NATO to counter the threats posed by Russian and Chinese ships and submarines in the Arctic. What's China's comment? Thank you.
As I have just said, the Arctic region bears on the common interests of the international community, and China's activity there are conducive to peace, stability, and sustainable development of the Arctic region, and they're in line with the international law. And we disapprove that the U.S. taking China or Russia as a pretext in seeking selfish gains.
Thank you. One more question from Bloomberg. The death toll in the Iran protests is now more than 500, and Donald Trump has indicated that he may strike Iran if it uses lethal force against demonstrators. Would the Foreign Minister like to comment on this? Thanks.
China hopes the Iranian government and people will overcome the current difficulties and uphold stability in the country. We always oppose interference in other countries' internal affairs and calls on parties that the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries shall be respected, and oppose the use or threat of force in international relations, and we call on parties to act in ways conducive to peace and stability in the Middle East.